Hey everyone, my name is Aaron, and welcome to another EDH Deck Tech. This time we are going to be talking about Negan the Cold-Blooded, one of the Walking Dead commanders. There's a lot of controversy about that one, but this commander honestly slaps. Fantastic design. And what Negan does is that Negan enters the battlefield. You and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls. Then those choices are revealed, and that player sacrifices those creatures. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. So this is a really wide open commander. It can go anywhere. Most people tend to push it towards like sacrifice and things like that. I kind of hate that style of playing, so I pushed it towards treasures, but this is definitely one of my stronger commanders. It's something that during Rule 0, like, I will be very open about what it does, so I kind of have like a little elevator pitch prepared for this deck specifically. So I usually tell people like, hey, what this deck usually does is that it comes in, it sacrifices stuff. I want to make a lot of treasures. I have a lot of the typical win cons like Revel in Riches, Torment to Hellfire. I do have some blink. It's not complete blink package. There is some sacrifice because I'm not going to synergize with my commander's ability here, but it's mostly a treasure deck, and it's done some pretty nasty stuff, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. So we're going to go through the deck here. So I don't have the lands as always. Lands bring me no joy, and they'll be in the deck list, but the mana base for this deck is pretty efficient, probably one of my better mana bases here. But we have our commander. So the first thing I'm going to go through here is we have just our typical ramp. So I'm light. I'm usually heavier on ramp in commander decks, but this one I only have about like maybe 8 or 9 real ramp pieces in here, but just because this deck generates so much treasure that I don't really find myself needing to ramp. I might even go down. My deck's always a work in progress. So we have Orzhov Sigint, Boros Sigint, Arcane Sigint, Talisman of Indulgence, Rakdos Sigint, Mind Stone. Mind Stone has a sacrifice on it, so there's a lot of cards that synergize with sacrificing stuff, like Mayhem Devil and stuff like that. So just a small synergy there. Solemn Simulacrum, that's another one. He comes in, he ramps, he gets you a card. You can sacrifice him as well. I know a lot of people talk about how Solemn Simulacrum is kind of like a washed up card sort of, but I still think it's great. I'm never mad to do this exactly on turn 4 or even earlier if I ramp it out. Water Stone, I'm in Mardu, so there's you're gonna get your rocks. So now we have card draw. So we have Necropotence, so skip your draw phase, and then you can pay life for a card. So just make sure that you're always at 7, which is pretty important to this deck, making sure you have a full grip, and especially with the amount of treasures in this, the triple black pips is almost never a setback. So we have Professional Facebreaker, Menace. When one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. That's cool. This deck doesn't really attack, so we're mostly here for that second ability, which is sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, so you're turning your treasures into card draw. So we just have Demonic Tutor, go get a card. Deadly Dispute, so as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or a creature. You're going to have lots of treasures. There's almost always going to be an artifact, but one thing that throws people off when I play this deck is I am not afraid to sacrifice Negan, because I will happily recast him and remove something off the board and get more treasures. So a lot of times I'm sacrificing Negan or something like that. There's not a lot of like tokens in this deck to sacrifice, so it's mostly going to be a treasure. But draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. This was the bane of last standard, and it just rotated out, and glad it's gone, but it's a super good card. I'm not going to deny it. We have Vampiric Tutor, pay 2 life, search your card for 1 card, shuffle your library, put it on top. Just go get what you need, whatever it is. I don't have any combos in this deck, but there's a lot of pieces that can just absolutely shut the board down. So we have Morbid Opportunists. When one or more other creatures dies, draw a card. This ability triggers only once a turn, has great synergy with your commander. You could just cast Negan, get a treasure, and if someone has more than one creature, then you're almost always going to get at least 1 treasure off of that, and then you're going to get a card off of Morbid Opportunist. As for Sentinel, whenever opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless they pay 1. Great card to see in your starting hand. Doesn't really do much later in the game. I don't have a lot of, or any ways to pump it, but it's also, you know, an artifact that has a lot of synergy with this deck. You can kill it when you need it. So you have Jessica's Will. You're going to see this card a lot. Add 1 red for each target in opponent's hand. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn, and you get to choose both if you control your commander. Like, there's a fantastic card. So we have a new card. We have Braid's Arisen Nightmare from Dominaria United. So at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, a land, or planeswalker. And if you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it, and for each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. So you can just say, hey, I'm gonna sacrifice a land. This deck has a lot of treasures. You can just ding yourself the 1 land, and people don't want to sacrifice lands. Then you get to draw a lot of cards. You can sacrifice, you know, treasures, creatures, anything like that. It's a great way to get cards. I haven't played this in this. I just put it in this deck this morning because it's too good to not put it in here. But I imagine it's going to do a lot of work. Fire X in Arena, you know, just get a card on your upkeep, lose 1 life. We have Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. So we're doubling our treasure. So anything that makes treasure, we're now getting twice that much. Prosper Tonebound. So this is one that absolutely spirals out of control. He's his own commander. But I mostly have it in here for the card draw and for the treasure. But at the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library, and until end of turn, you may play that, excuse me, until end of your next turn, you may play that card, and whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. So even if you're hitting lands, you're getting treasure for playing lands. Like, there's a lot of, I believe this is the #1 Rakdos commander out there now, so there's nothing really brand new I could say about it, but fantastic fit in this deck specifically, and then it's a good body as well. Goldspan Dragon, flying, haste. When it attacks or becomes a target of a spell, create a treasure token. And also, treasures you control have sacrificed this artifact, add 2 mana of any color. So now you're getting double value for your treasures. So you can just dump all your mana, get whatever your treasures were doing before, you're doing twice. The Tormented Hailfire can hit for double whatever it was originally going to hit for. It's a fantastic card. Jan Jensen, Chaos Crafter. I slept on this card, absolutely, until I saw it in practice, and I played a couple games with it. So as haste, and then you can sacrifice an artifact creature, create 2 treasure tokens, and then you can sacrifice a non-creature artifact, create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact tokens. So you can turn your treasure into artifacts, and then your artifact creatures into tokens. You can use it to sacrifice Solemn Simulacrum or anything you don't need. It's a shock, and it has haste too. So I remember like one time someone's like, "Oh, well, you can't do that. It has summoning sickness." I was like, "Actually, it has haste. I can start doing this now," and just got instant blockers and was able to just survive this insane war of attrition with somebody I was playing with. Very, very good card. So we have Unexpected Windfall as an additional cost to the cast a spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards, create 2 cards. So it's not card advantage, but you're going through your deck, you're discarding some stuff, you're going up on treasures. You're seeing more of your deck. Those 2 lands you don't need, you can pitch them or anything like that. There's a little bit of recursion in this deck as well. So Colleen, Reclusive Painter, when it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token, just 2 mana. Go on ahead, pop it out, and make a treasure. And other creatures you control enter the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So we're not really relying on that ability in particular. Mostly just 2 mana, get a blocker, get a treasure, but it can be relevant. You know, you can pop those treasures, get a real big Goldspan Dragon, and do that last bit of damage you can to someone. Or if you need to go tall, it's a pretty good card here. So you have Big Score. Big Score is just another Unexpected Windfall type effect. Does almost, actually I think literally the same thing with a little more generous casting on it. We have Zorn. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. So whatever you're getting in treasures, it's that +1. And specifically on Negan, you're effectively doubling the amount that he gets. Not off his trigger specifically, if you hit 2. So Pitiless Plunderer, one of the best cards to generate treasures out there. And one thing about this is this is like a very aggressive combo piece, and there's not a lot of combos in this deck. I don't think there's any infinite combos, but it's just a value engine. Like if your stuff is dying and you're killing your own stuff, or you need a block and you're just getting treasures off of that, you want to have as many treasures as possible. And then we have Ragavan, Nimble, Pilfer. So this card kind of sucks in this deck, but I have it in here because, like, 1, I own it, and 2, like, it makes treasures, I guess, and 3, with Negan, it's really easy to keep the board clear. So I was actually shocked at how often I was able to connect with this. And if you hit someone, you get some cards. Not really a particularly great commander card, but in this deck, I think it does some decent work. So Cataclysmic Manufacturer, one of the best cards in this deck. If you create a clue, food, or treasure token, create one of each. So this is giving you card advantage. It's giving you some health. It's giving you more stuff to sacrifice just for doing what this deck already wants to do, which is make as many treasures as possible. And then we have Hawkins National Laboratory. I wasn't going to show too many lands, but this is a little cute one. It's from the Stranger Things Secret Lair. And you can just tap it to investigate, so it combos with Academy Manufacturer, so you can get a treasure that way, which is a very elaborate way to get one treasure. But you can also flip it if you manage to get 4 clues. It's not a win con at all. It's just in here because I think it's cute. I like to put, Secret Lair cards in as many of my decks as possible. But when it flips, you can return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I definitely caught someone with this one time when I resurrected Negan, and I flipped this card, and it was pretty good. So Fable, the Mirror Breaker card from Standard right now. So you, it's a saga. At the first phase, you create a 2/2 red goblin creature token with, whenever it attacks, create a treasure token. That's 90% of the reason it's here. Then step 2, you can discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. So again, you're going through your deck. That's how red gets the cards that it needs. It's not card advantage, but you're looking at more of your deck, getting what you need right now, throwing out what you don't need. And then when you exile it, it returns transformed. And when it transforms, it becomes Reflection of Kiki Jiki. And then you could create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control except has haste. And there are some really good targets in this deck to copy, such as Dockside Extortionists, things like that. It can do a lot of work on its own. We can do another good target is Marionette Master. We're in Mardu. We're in a treasure deck. You're going to see Smothering Tide. It's there. Everyone knows what this card does. It's a pain in the butt, but I can't not put Smothering Tide into the treasures deck. So we have Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, flying, trample. When it dies, you get to choose one. You can get some card advantage, exile the top 2 cards of your library, and then you can play those until your next turn, and you can create 3 treasure tokens. I found myself exiling it most of the time, because typically when it dies, it's dying in the middle of a board wipe. No one's specifically targeting this, so I'm just like, you know what, I need to have some extra moves for my next turn. And most of the time when it dies, I have so many treasures that I can bounce back pretty easily. So we have Mahadi, Emporium Master. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. So when stuff is dying, you're getting treasures. And specifically, like if someone's playing a sacrifice deck, or you're making people sacrifice things with Negan's ability, you're getting just an absolute ton of treasures here. Stormclan Artist, there's not a ton of instant and sorceries in this deck, but it's just a fantastic way of generating treasures. It's a really good card, so even if I'm like casting a board wipe and I'm going up 1, I'm not mad at it at all. And then we have Dockside Extortionists. Everyone knows what this card does. I don't tend to play Dockside a lot. I don't particularly like this card, but there's no way that I'm not going to put the best treasure generator in the game in my treasures deck. So this is the one deck where I run it. I reveal this in Rule 0. I'm like, hey, I have Dockside Extortionists, I have Blink effects. You almost already know what this deck wants to do, but when it enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens. X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. You can blink it, you can reanimate it, you can do a lot of things with this stupid thing. You can copy it. There's ways to copy it with Reflections of Kiki Jiki. So you have Gadrak, the Crown Scourge. It's just a big beater, 5/4, and you can't attack unless I control 4 or more artifacts, which is very easy to meet that condition in this deck. And at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-creature that non-token creature that died this turn. So when things are dying, you're getting tokens. And again, has a big payoff with your commander specifically. It's 2 mana, so I can curve that into Negan and hit someone for 1, hit someone for 2. And we got to end the game at some point, right? That's mostly what the tutors are for. I have Demonic and Vampiric Tutor. We went over those, which is just get a bunch of treasures, then end the game. So we have Torment to Hellfire. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Anyone who's been playing Commander for a while has absolutely died to a massive Torment to Hellfire. They can't do anything about it. And that's just a big payoff for having a butt ton of treasures here. Revel in Riches is another card that I'm usually against. I don't like I win the game type effects, but I'm playing the treasure deck. I have to play my specific win cons in treasures. Everyone's already expecting them also if I'm playing a treasure deck. So, I don't want to be like, I'm playing treasures, but I'm not playing Revel in Riches. So, whenever a creature in an opponent dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So I think it's fair. The entire board has a turn to respond to this. It's an enchantment. Can they remove it? Can they not? Can they get rid of my treasures or anything like that? And it has specific synergy with Negan as well. So creature opponent dies, I get a treasure, and Negan also does a very similar thing of getting treasures when things are sacrificed. So, and there's a lot of ways to double, triple those. So my favorite way to end a game in this game, in this deck specifically, is going to be Marionette Master. So it has Fabricate 3. When this creature enters the battlefield, put 3 1/1 counters on it, or create 3 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. When an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So you're almost always going to take the counters. Its power becomes 4, and then you're dealing 4 damage every time you sacrifice a treasure. So you're just killing people with the treasures. If you have a whole bunch of treasures and you're just I've been able to kill people at instant speed with spells on the stack with Marionette Master, and it's a good Mexican standoff type card of just like, hey, this is loaded. I can just empty all my treasure. I can kill one person, and I know people talk about a lot of the feel bads from that kind of situation, but I love it. I absolutely love it. So we have Luminous Broodmoth. I don't have the Mothra version. If I did, I'd be running it. Flying, whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its controller with a flying counter on it. So this is specifically here, like I said, I'm not afraid to sacrifice my own creatures. I don't particularly have a lot of means of generating a big wide board, so I typically only have a handful of creatures, and I'm not afraid to kill them. I'm not afraid to sacrifice my own Negan. And then he'll come back, and this is effectively a bounce spell, so Negan will come back, I'll be able to do the trigger again, sacrifice at least one other thing, and now he's a flyer, which is a pretty good thing. Mayhem Devil, whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. So people play fetch lands, people are playing their own treasures, people playing whatever their sacrifice strategies are. I feel like people sacrifice stuff in any sort of deck at all, even if it's just like, hey, Evolving Wilds, like that sacrifices, and then I can just point that damage where I need to if there's something problematic on the board. And if I have like a lot of treasures, then I could just like, all right, I'm just gonna sack 5 treasures, kill something with 5 toughness, and just let that mana fizzle or do something with it. Mayhem Devil, an incredible card in this deck. So I have Crackling Doom. It deals 2 damage to each opponent. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. So this is a way that anyone going tall, I've definitely domed Eldrazi with this and stuff like that before. Very good card. Demon's Disciple, when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, so this is synergy with the sacrifice side of Negan. Fleshbag Marauder does a similar thing, but it doesn't target planeswalkers. And we have Cataclysmic Gearhulk, which is one of our board wipes. When it enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they own, and then they sacrifice the rest. So this pairs the board down. If you're going to keep Negan, most of the time I don't, because Negan sees the sacrifice treasures, and I can just recast them, and whatever survived the board wipe, I can just kill that. It's a pretty mean card. Lucille, equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has menace, and when equipped creature attacks, defending player sacrifices a creature, and if I do, I create a walker token. So obviously this is in there for maximum flavor. It has great synergy with Negan as well. I can't say no to this card. So now we have some ways to blink Negan, because his enter the battlefield effect is very good. There's other really good targets to enter the battlefield with, such as Marionette Master. There's also like blinking stuff is pseudo, like dodges removal. There's Dockside Extortionists, so you can blink that, make even more treasures. So Eldrazi Displacer is a blink effect. Exile another target creature, then return it to the battlefield tapped under its player's control. So you can also target other people's stuff. I never noticed that until I read it right now. But yeah, if someone has like a really big token or something like that, you could just blank that off of that. It does require the colorless mana there, but the deck accommodates that in the lands. So we have Charming Prince. When he enters the battlefield, choose one, scry 2, gain 3 life, exile another target creature I own, and return it onto the battlefield under my control at the beginning of the next step. So pretty self-explanatory. It's a blink effect. It enters the battlefield. This also combos with the Mothra card. I forgot what it's called. Luminous Broodmoth. Because you can get the flying counter, then you can blink the thing with the flying counter, and then it gets blinked and it loses the flying counter, then it has to die again, and they have to specifically kill Luminous Broodmoth to stop that loop. It is very strong. So we have Panharmonicon. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability or a permanent you control the trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This is mostly here to synergize with Negan's enter the battlefield, but I had a really good game where I had Marionette Master enter, and I did the fabricate trigger twice, and I was hitting people for 7 with each treasure, and I ended the game right there. You can double the dockside triggers if you have Panharmonicon and a blink effect, and then you're just going to town. Absolutely fantastic card. Ephemerate, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and then it has rebound. That means you get to do it again at the beginning of your next upkeep. Teleportation circle at the beginning of your next end step. Exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So you can't really steal stuff, it's under owner's control, but you're typically targeting your own stuff, so it's mostly here to just make sure you're doing Negan's ETB as much as you can to just make sure that no one else really has a board. And we got a board wipe. We have by invitation only. Choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. It's almost always going to kill you, but if someone has, like if you're playing against a lot of go-wide decks and you just choose 13 and they have to sacrifice 13, multiple people have to sacrifice something and you get like 23 treasures or even more depending on what else is on board. So even if I have no board, I could just recast Negan or I could recast something else. Path to Exile, just some typical spot removal here. Nothing special. Animate Dead. I'm a firm believer if you're playing black, Animate Dead's always going to have a valid target no matter what level of commander you're playing. And animating something else, this is a deck that has a lot of sacrifice effects, so if something big comes in and you target it with Negan, actually Negan doesn't target, he gets around hexproof. I forgot to mention that earlier. It says choose on that card, and I've had to explain that to someone with Swiftfoot boots on their guy. But go kill a big dragon or something like that and then steal it. Teferi's Protection, you're going to get a lot of aggro. People are going to want to hit you as hard as they can, survive that Cyclonic Rift, because Cyclonic Rift will send this deck to the Stone Age, especially if you're sitting on a big, massive treasure. So Teferi's Protection, always a good card to have. Chaos Warp, standard red removal, Swords to Plowshare, Commander Darling, Generous Gift, destroy target permanent, give them an elephant. Soul Shatter, each opponent sacrifices a creature, planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost amongst creatures and planeswalkers they control. So this catches people off guard because it hits planeswalkers as well. So if someone has like the big Ugin and they're just like, plus whatever, I'm going to deal 3 damage to this, and I'm like, well, I'm going to respond, I'm going to Soul Shatter your Ugin or whatever. Usually they're going for the board wipe with Ugin, but the board wipe with Ugin doesn't particularly suck in this deck because it does not stop our treasures. I haven't run into that situation, just imagining it right now, but Soul Shatter, always good. Blood Money, I love this card. It is a little overcosted, but the flavor in this deck, I can't deny running this card. Destroy all creatures. For each non-token creature destroyed this way, create a tapped treasure token. So just wipe the board and just get a bunch of money. And especially, like, I had one game where I just had Revel in Riches, and I played Blood Money, and I wiped the board, and I just like, okay, cool, like, can you stop me? Like, whatever big board you're going to turn sideways at me, I have enough to get out, to win on my next upkeep. And everyone's like, oh, guess we scoop. And I'm like, got him. And Deflecting Swat. If you control your commander, you can cast it for free, redirect the thing. Even though I'm not typically super defending Negan in this deck, because, like, people love killing Negan because they think, like, oh, I'm killing your commander, I'm disrupting your plan. It's like, okay, cool, I can just cast him again. I have like 20 treasures. Like, and when Negan comes in, like, I take something else. I could take as much as 2 things, and I can take something important as well. I think it's pretty good. And then Anguish Unmaking, our last removal piece. Exile target non-land permanent, and you lose 3 life. You gotta kill the problematic things. This deck has done so much work for me, and I absolutely love it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So as always, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support. And if you guys have any questions, any interactions, or anything like that I missed, go on ahead and let me know in the comments. And I appreciate your support and your feedback. And you all have a good day.